Hi, everyone.
Good morning,
Hello,
everyone.
Paolo. So it's good to see you. We'll be talking about a topic that, well, a few of you have. It's about transforming your organization, your procurement organization. So today, I'm really happy to have Paolo, our client from Amplifon, and he will share about the story. What we want to do here is not to tell you just the high-level things that you always hear about digital transformation, but hear the very concrete things, the steps you can take, not the framework, not the theory, but the real thing that Paolo has done with his team to transform his organization. I'm Pierre Laprée. I'm the Chief Product Officer for SpendHQ. We do spend intelligence and procurement performance management. Before that, I was the founder and the CEO of Pierre. And before that, I was the deputy of the global CPO for the Adecco Group. So I was like you a few years ago. Paolo, tell us about us.
And I'm Paolo.
How about you?
I'm the global head of Indirect Procurement at Amplifon. I'm accountable for the end-to-end OPEX, CAPEX, and rent expenditure at group level.
So, can you please tell us about Amplifon? Well, I know Amplifon, not because I need your product, but because it's a big brand. Can you tell us about Amplifon?
So very quickly about the group. So we were founded in 1950. We're a Milan-based organization. We're the global leader in hearing care solution. We have about a revenue of 2.2 billion. And we operate across 9,600 points of sale. So it's a very fragmented global retail network. You see here another couple of numbers about us. So we serve more than 1 million customers per year. We have a global market share of 12%, so that gives us the magnitude of the growth potential that we have ahead of us. And we have an EBITDA of about 24.8%, so very healthy performance from a financial standpoint. In terms of the strategy of the company, we like to call it a simple and focused strategy around 3 pillars. The first one is consolidate organically or inorganically our global leadership position. The second one is to continue offering an unmatchable customer proposition. And the third one is make the organization more effective and leaner. At the end, our mission is to empowering people to rediscover all the emotions of sound.
Okay. Thanks for that. So, the first question I would have for you, Paolo, is when you embark in this kind of big transformation project, these are hard things because you need to transform yourself. Though this means taking a hard look at yourself and knowing what you have to change. And once you do that, you need to embark people, a lot of people, your team, but also outside of that. So that's hard. And one thing that struck me with you and other people who achieve great things is what we call intentionality. You know, it's deciding, focusing, and setting your mind on something and let it be your guide for everything. So whenever you are in doubt, you know that your intention is to go from here to there. So what was your North Star? What was your intention embarking in this project?
So I've been in this role for about 2 years now, and I decided to take the challenge simply because of the room. I had to make an impact and to drive a change. So since I joined, I set a very clear strategy, which I communicated across the organization about transitioning from a reactive purchasing department into a business solution-focused global sourcing team. That was, for me, the North Star of this journey.
Okay. And so clearly that was this notion of intentionality, but you need to be very self-conscious when you embark on that. You know your flaws, know your own challenges. And because if you don't see them, you will fail. You will encounter unexpected roadblocks. So how did you do that? How did you approach that? What were your challenges?
I think the first challenge was around the why. So why did we need a change? You know, I joined the company, I didn't know much about the business, didn't know much about the company culture. So how did I convince the organization to make a change? So at the end here, it was very transparently about sharing the gaps and the limitation we had in our current way of working, and then presenting a new way forward.
And so that's about the organization. You know how it works and what are the pitfalls, I would say. What about your team? Did you have the right team in place, the right talent? How did you assess that?
I think the second challenge around here is about what I call a digestion capacity. You know, change needs to be assimilated and processed, like very much like food. So if you don't understand the capacity of digestion of the team, then you take the risk of pushing it too much, and then the change doesn't turn into a fact. So that was for me a key point to consider: how fast and how much is the organization capable of taking a change. Okay. Driving it, it's something; making it landing, it's something else.
Okay, so that was the challenges, and then there was an aspect around, the search for performance in your organization. So what was the challenge there? What was...
So when I joined the company, we were managing procurement performance simply with a spreadsheet on SharePoint, where people could, access and change and do whatever they wanted on that file. But that really created some difficulty for us in the way we were projected the result to the company leadership. So that was the key problem. And you're all procurement professional. You know that if the numbers are not reliable, your reputation is also at stake. So that for me was number one battle, to ring fence the performance and the numbers, and to ring fence our reputation.
Okay, and so you pay attention to how you manage the performance, and you need the tools to do that. But what is the expectation from the leadership in terms of performance for your indirect procurement team?
Yeah, so a new joiner always is challenged with a higher performance type of target. So the expectation is to really increase our impact on the P&L. That's why it comes absolutely essential to have a backbone with a clear system managing your performance. Otherwise, the two things at the end don't talk to each other. Okay,
and you mentioned you have like 9,300 centers.
Sales.
You're also supporting these people. So does this help? How do you translate your work into actually helping your colleagues in the branches?
Well, at the end, it's about the P&L impact. In our company, the procurement performances is embedded in the country P&L. So if we don't deliver the results, then we put the P&L of the country at risk. So it's absolutely essential for us to be in control. We're also listed, so the quarterly reporting is absolutely key. And we need to basically inform the business how we are doing versus the quarterly targets. And thanks to the technology we have developed, we are now in full control.
So that's very interesting. As a public company, you need to tie your action to financial communication. Yeah. That must be quite a challenge. In my previous roles, we were challenged every time by finance and the stakeholders on the savings. They're actually an aspect of communicating to the markets.
Yeah, so with finance, look, I think we onboarded finance since day one. We share with them our gaps and our limitation, and we created this interdependency between procurement and finance. What we did at the end was removing silos and segregation around number reporting, and we practically created a new business language, which is now applied in the day-to-day routine.
Okay. How reluctant or attracted to that was finance?
Well, I think finance realized that our reporting was not up to the standards required for listed companies. So they share the pain. Okay. I mean, crunching Excel spreadsheet and trying to find a way there, it's not a nice job for anybody, right? Yeah. So this was the main booster in terms of convincing them that the change was needed.
Okay, and because what we see a lot with clients is finance doesn't care. Yeah, procurement, your numbers. How did you fight that? Because that's hard. What language, what outcomes did you put forward to convince them to talk with you?
I think it was about the simplicity of what we were after. At the end, we took the finance methodology about saving calculation. So we look at P&L impact versus last year, P&L impact versus budget, balance sheet impact when you talk about CapEx or rent expenditure, and we translated that into a tool, right? So we took the way of working for finance and we reflected that into the new way of measuring performance. So we kind of, aligned the languages, and we kind of talk the same terminology when it comes to savings.
Okay. So, pardon my bluntness, but this is a rather procurement-focused view of the outcome. Yeah. If we were asking your stakeholders, what would they say has changed?
I think what they would say is that now we are in control. So moving from numbers all over the place into knowing 24/7 where you are, whether you are delivering or not, quarterly, by category, by geography, by even team member. that gives us a full overview, and it can enable us then to take the analysis from simply reporting the numbers into strategic insights for the business.
Okay, and how the perception of your stakeholder has changed, meaning has it helped the collaboration? How do you use that information, that monitoring performance in your conversations with your key stakeholders?
It's absolutely embedded in the way we operate. So finance has full access to the new procurement performance management. So we get the data from the same place in the same way. So we avoid all that discussion around number reliability, and we're able then to create a common language in the business.
Okay, and one of the things we see, well, actually not enough, but probably in your case is, does it change the level of expectations, or how did it impact the culture, both from the stakeholders vis-à-vis procurement, but also your team vis-à-vis the business?
I think this is a good one because it's an example on how technology can have a broader impact on not only the way of working, but also on the culture. I think this shift helped us creating a much more performance-driven culture where personal accountability and own impact are really now installed in the way we operate every day. That was the biggest cultural shift that we have seen in the team.
Can you give a concrete example of behaviors that the team have put in place now? Or?
Yeah, look, numbers are becoming, very important. So you see that the precision and the usage of the new procurement performance management is very high. We have a simple rule in the business: if it's not there, it doesn't count, and that has been very clear for the team because when you talk about, year-end performance and bonuses and STI, it comes from there. So that's driving an immediate adoption and usage of the tool.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting one. Maybe we'll cover that later on. One thing that is important, and so you said it has created some behavior changes, cultural changes. I've purchased software in the past, I've used software in the past, I'm selling software now, and one of the things we hate is shelfware. So things you buy and that just sits on the shelf that is not used. We help your team with the customer success manager, but there's only so much you can do. The change has to come from within. So how do you prepare your organization, your team, your stakeholders? What did you do to make sure that adoption would be there day one once you go live with the tool?
I think the onboarding is key, right? So we dedicated a lot of time to manage the change in terms of training, in terms of Q&A, in terms of listening to the issue that the team had. And then we did the same with finance. So we really went into listening mode. We presented the gaps, we presented the limitation of our way of working, but at the same time we listened to the feedback from the business. And that the sum of the two created a clear path forward.
Okay. And so having been a buyer in my past, having a team of salespeople to manage, I can't help but make a parallel with the sales team. And you will never see a sales team without a CRM to track their leads, the progress, the results. But everybody hates that. So what did you do to make this not an annoyance, or how is the team reacting to that? Because basically you're asking them to track things they were not tracking before. What's in it for them?
Well, I think it depends. Well, it's impacting also their own reputation and reliability, right? So we are luckily enough, or not luckily enough, depending on the point of view, that our function sits in the executive team. So procurement function is at the top of the organization, reporting directly to the CEO. And you don't want to mess up your numbers when you're there, right? So it brought accountability to the team, but also a bit of an obsession towards the number, which is now very healthy because we are in control. We know where we're going, and we can prevent issues rather than managing issues.
Okay, that's interesting. And this notion of accountability is important, but the personal branding is interesting. We've seen clients who are actually getting the buyers on key topics or negotiation in front of the management team, to explain what they're doing. And again, having a tool to support that conversation and make sure that you highlight the key contributor, that's actually a good way to get the team to adopt the whole thing and make sure that you have data. That's really interesting. So that was a rather interesting journey from preparing the organization, doing the things step by step to not overflow the capacity of your team. And I know that procurement people, or at least the good ones, they tend to be always wanting to achieve more, to always optimize the next thing. So you've already done quite a lot with your organization. Considering where you are today, where's your mind at? What's the next thing you'll be looking at?
Yeah. No, I think the implementation of procurement performance management is key for us to continue this transformation journey ahead of us. The way we have now approached technology over the last 2 years is by need, right? So we have a need, we go after a technology solution, we make it small, we make it incremental, and we make it digestible to the organization. I think my ambition is to then start bringing an integrated view of the procurement technology toolkit to really build up a user-friendly ecosystem. So moving from need after need into a more integrated view. At the end, it's about creating that ecosystem for people to use and adopt in their daily work.
Okay, and there is this notion of step by step. What is possible now that wasn't possible before?
Well, I think it's again the reliability and how the numbers are solid and how the numbers can be retrieved. That's, I think, for me, it's the essence of any transformation. If you're not in control, your reputation is affected, numbers are all over the place. With this change that we have now implemented, we have really like a strong backbone for us to build up from.
Okay, and so for me, that was one of the key takeaways from the conversation is you may want to optimize a lot of things, you may want to go after all the fancy technology, but until you have built a solid foundation, and reputation for me is the key word, all the rest is noise if you don't have this credibility.
And look, guys, at the end, moving from zero to hero sounds very exciting, but at the end, it has to be digested by the company, right? So I rather take, as I said, small and incremental little steps, but have an impact rather than building a super fancy AI-generated roadmap that then doesn't work.
Okay, good. Paolo, thank you for sharing all these insights.
You're welcome.
So we're now ready to take some questions if you want. So I don't know if some of you use Slido. We can look at that first. And otherwise, I think that we have our friends who will be sharing a microphone on that. So let me use technology. Okay, so we have 2 questions there. So the first one was, you mentioned the fact that you didn't want to choke your team. What was the level of effort, the duration? So how taxing was it on your organization?
So I think we started working around this project, I think somewhere in spring like 2 years ago. And then it took us about 4 to 5 months to implement the solution. I think we didn't really rely heavily on our IT department because we were busy with all kinds of different priorities. So we somehow able to compensate, but at the end it worked, and it gave us the chance also to be in full control of the way we were deploying this solution. So it was a rather simple journey, and we were able to then drive an adoption also because of the simplicity of the solution.
Okay, so that's another very interesting question. After all these months that you've been using the solution, if you were to do it again, what would you do differently, if anything?
Yeah, that's always an interesting one. Look, I think not much in terms of how we did it. At the end, again, I think simplicity and making it adoptable and digestible, it's the key. So I think, honestly speaking, I probably wouldn't do anything different. Now it's working the way we need, it's working the way finance needs, the way the executive team looks at it. So maybe I'm a bit, arrogant, but I wouldn't do anything different so far.
Okay. There's a question about your other tools and how they fit together. How do you approach building the broader digital roadmap?
Yeah, as I said, we have approached now our business needs by each of them. So we look at, we had an issue on procurement performance, and now we have addressed it. We now will step into spend analytics, and we'll look at the overall source to contract and source to pay processes. But we have approached now this individually, which of course it's debatable whether it's the ideal approach or whether it's the most effective. But what I'm obsessed with is with an impact that technology can have. So I'd rather go slow, but making it work, rather than going fast and fancy and not making it work.
Okay. There's another question around ESG and whether you only track savings or if the business is interested. Well, so the question is, what do you do about ESG in your performance?
Yeah, so we use this solution simply for procurement performance management, but we will certainly need to expand the scope of our tracking and our performance measurement as well on the ESG criteria. So not there yet in terms of this specific solution. We're looking at other separate solution, but it will certainly an important part.
Okay, good. We're at the list in Slido. Is there any question in the audience? Yeah, so just wait for it.
Thank you. Felipe from Amazon. On the transformation journey, and you spoke that change management is kind of the key to align priorities. How did you do it? Did you do it from procurement? Who was the change management kind of office? Or did you have a specific project management team? Or, I mean, my question is from which angle did you tackle?
Yeah. Thank you, Felipe, for the question. Look, we are a fairly flat organization in Amplifon, right? So we don't have big project management officer team or change or communication. So that gives us the advantage that we're able to go much quicker and much more meaningful to the business, right? So if we talk to the CEO of a country, we talk to the CEO of the country and we address his needs, right? So it's a very pragmatic approach, very pragmatic company culture. So we didn't really, pack it in the typical corporate change way.
But you were leading from procurement?
Yes.
Together with finance?
Yes.
Got it.
So we went to finance and said, we have a problem. You're asking us to deliver more, but we are in troubles in the way we report numbers, we track it, so we need to have a change. And we made it a common problem. So, you guys from finance cannot really rely on the numbers coming from a spreadsheet, and we cannot really rely either. So we have a common problem. We translated that problem for us into a common organizational problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. And okay, so we have two here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Daniel from Volt. I was wondering how was the integration portion? Like how easy or hard was it to integrate the tool into your existing ecosystem?
Yeah, the decision we took is, a rather simple one. We kept it a standalone solution for the time being, right? So very easy to set it up, very easy to have the user onboarded. At one point, we will have to integrate it. I mean, if you talk about spend baseline, which is the basis, of course, for our procurement performance management, then at one point we will need to integrate that into the ERP and have a common, set of numbers moving from, solution to solution. But for the time being, that's not the immediate ambition.
So manually transfer the data from one place to another?
No, so for the time being, it's manual input.
So I need to put my software hat on. We have a library of more than 30 standard integrations. So we integrate upstream with Spend Analytics tool exactly to do that, to get the baseline. We integrate with 8 or 9 different e-sourcing solutions because when you are in the pipeline, you don't want your users to enter project information and then do that in the e-sourcing tool. So we have integration with Coupa, with Ariba, with Workday, with Market Dojo, with Archlet, with many more. And as a general rule, we have developed a set of connectors exactly for that. Integration is key, and we don't want anyone to enter the same data twice, if only because it will avoid mistakes, but then convenience.
And for us, it was about the priority, right? I mean, of course, integrating it with your ERP, it brings all different kinds of discussion and problems and issues around data. So we needed to act fast on the performance side. That's why we took this decision to focus on that.
Thanks. There was a question in front here.
Thanks.
Federico from Philips. What are the next steps now from a performance perspective? Where are you driving the procurement team?
Yeah, so we would like to use then the tool expanding the scope. So we, as you saw, we have 9,600 point of sale. So for us, rents and real estate assets are absolutely key. So we would like to integrate that portfolio of spend into the tool, which we haven't done yet, simply because the rent expenses are below EBITDA, so there is no P&L effect, but it's only a balance sheet effect. But that's where we have the ambition to go next. So the idea is that as we progress in our spend management, we keep on feeding the tool with new addressable areas.
Thanks.
Do we have any other question? I think we have time for one more. Oh, good. Paolo, thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks everyone for coming and for the question. And I have a few minutes to go back to the next one. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.